for us. There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. So Connor, you can see not only the audience, but also your friends on stage and yourself right now, correct?
Yeah.
All right. That's a huge victory for us here at the Frida Cinema. Very excited to have you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Connor, if you hold up one of your hands like near your shoulder, I could get in like lower, like a grip. I could like Fey Ray you.
Yeah.
For like King
This is good.
Song. Turn it like this way, like I'm in.
Hold on.
The scale's
Hold
about.
on.
Yeah.
Here. If you can, hold on.
Yeah.
If you can perch, sit on my finger.
Yeah, like this. Good. Good.
Very good. Okay. Well, I promised we would get to the audience as soon as possible, but I wanted to bring up the fact that this movie kind of takes, it kind of ends the events of it 3 years ago. Can we kind of go one by one and talk about where we're at now individually as a group? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm still locked inside my house, scared to go out. No, what do you mean where we're at?
We leave the events of the film, and I just want to know where the George Lucas Talk Show is at, where you guys are at individually.
Sure.
We'll get deeper later. No.
Yeah, we're still doing the show. We're doing a lot of live shows. We just did one in Brooklyn. Was that last weekend? Yeah. With the cast of Severance. It was very fun. We still do some live streams occasionally, but yeah, I live in LA now, so that's different. But yeah, so it's a little harder to do shows, but it's I think you like the distance, right?
From you?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm a little intimidated by you saying we'll get deeper later, and the first question being maybe the deepest question
Well, you just wait.
I've ever received at a Q&A. Where am I now?
Yeah. 3 years post documentary.
Yeah.
No,
How are we feeling?
I mean, I think we had a weird, I don't want to say weird, but like when the pandemic, I was going to say pandemic ended, but when vaccines rolled out and the world started to like transition to a new stage, I think we had an odd moment of like, what is the show now? Because for many years, for 5 or 6 years, it was very much one thing, which was we do this show monthly at the UCB Theater at one of their venues. It's this slot, it's this whatever. And then the live stream turned it into like such a different thing for a while. And coming off of that, it was unclear what we want to do. And I think where we landed was like, let's not box ourselves into anything. And the George Lucas Talk Show is at this point, whatever we want it to be, whatever format feels like fits, when we feel like doing a show, when the right opportunity presents itself, or the right venue, or the right guests, or what have you. Sometimes it's a documentary, sometimes Connor's on a screen. No, it's like there's not a clear answer, but I feel like we're trying to, we're not trying to be all things for all people, but we're trying to like figure out constantly what feels like the best way to do it in any moment.
You're right. It was a weirdly open-ended question to open with. Great answer, though. You too?
Yeah, since the events of this movie, we edited this movie, so it's been a busy few years.
Yeah.
Trying to find the shape of what the story is and how we can best present it to a form that feels like, it's an enjoyable film and it's not just capturing a live show verbatim. So it was a challenging few years, and I think we found a lot in post, as I'm sure you hear from most documentary filmmakers, and it was certainly true with this film. So yeah, and then other than that, just bringing it out to audiences like you, bringing it to festivals, trying to find ways to bring it to different kinds of audiences and see it on as big a screen as possible, because I think that just makes it all the more special. And when you're seeing it with a collective audience, it just enhances the experience. So we've been busy with that and just getting it more and more out in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 33 when I started this. I wasn't even old enough to be president, Connor. And now I'm 38, so I'm a different person, literally. And I'm just glad that there's still stuff in the movie that I resonate with. And it's been such a joy to share it with audiences and find sort of what resonates with them, and getting to have conversation with you all. So it's been a real joy and a thrill to actually get this out into the world. For so long it was just us in an edit room being like, is this funny? Is this good? Is this going to resonate with anybody? Yeah. And so far it has. So
awesome. Connor, where are you at now?
Literally and metaphorically.
Literally, I'm in Queens, the same apartment that you see briefly in the film. I'm 50 pounds heavier. Uh, and I think one thing that one thing that's very different is like when I remember back in 2019, I think I can speak, I think, for Griffin and Patrick and I, that we're all more exhausted than we were back then when
Correct.
this was a monthly show. And I know that when we were sort of contemplating the documentary back then, we were like, oh, and every place that it plays, we'll go and we'll do a George Lucas talk show wherever it screens. But that was before we did 300 plus hours of live stream. Like the amount of energy that we had back then compared to like when this documentary started, the number of hours that we had done the George Lucas talk show up to that time, we sort of blew past that within like a month or so of the pandemic live stream. And then there was a point where Patrick told me, and I had repressed this information until he reminded me of it again recently, that we did more hours of George Lucas talk show during the live stream than there are hours of The Simpsons that exist.
And that was very quick. That was within like the first 5 or 6
Yeah.
months of doing the live stream.
By
So
the way, that sucks. Like, that's bad.
you're acting like this is on me.
We're all in this and we're all
100%.
culpable, but I think it's
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah. But we're better than The Simpsons, I think, overall, right? More of a cultural impact, better footprint.
More consistent. More consistent.
More
Yeah.
consistent.
They maybe have higher highs than us, but I don't know. I don't know if our lows are lower.
This next one's for Ryan and Annamaria more specifically. You're not front and center as the filmmakers in this document. You know, documentarians can sometimes make the movie about themselves. This isn't necessarily like a tickled situation where you started a movie making something and we're just like kind of stumbled into UCB in New York and we're like, what is this?
He's doing our Q&A tomorrow. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
In Los Angeles. David
Really?
Farrier. Yeah. Sorry.
I loved playing that movie here, by the way. Just blind people. I mean, people coming in blind and watching the movie is amazing. But what drew, I mean, this just boils down to what drew you to the project. But like, really, it's just what kind of got you interested in Connor and the George Lucas talk show?
Yeah, so I was
More
a-
straightforward question
I
than the
was a
first one.
pretty big Star Wars geek as a kid, so this isn't that far of a stretch
Right.
that I would be interested in this. But there's that whole middle area of life where I went to film school and wanted to make serious art and all that. And I was just going through kind of a rough period in life and found Connor in the Village East doing midnight shows, and I was like, this guy, he's kind of like me in that he clearly did a deep dive into George Lucas, and that's sort of what, instead of me saying, I don't know, who's Mark Hamill, like a lot of people are like, oh, I love Star Wars, let me sort of research all the actors. I researched George Lucas.
Right.
And so when I found Connor doing the same thing, but not taking himself too seriously in the process, I was like, I want to work with him on something. Like, I thought maybe we would just, I don't know, knock out like a weekend shoot together. In 2019, like we would just film a Star Wars Day show and then put some little, clips of sort of it coming together, cut to, how many years later, and now it's a feature length film. And that's just what tends to happen for me is like, I have a little like avenue into something and then I just try to make it the most ambitious possible version of it. And I guess Connor and I have that in common. But what about you, Annamaria?
I have a weird, it's mentioned in the film. I first learned about Connor from the podcast 12-Hour Day that's mentioned in here. So that was a long time ago. And just loved hearing who he was from that show. And then just started going to his UCB shows that he was doing. I didn't go to George Lucas talk show right away. I was going to more of like the improv he was doing.
Right.
And then started going to the Chris Gethard show, which as you can see is like a big, bringing together a lot of people in this world. It was such an important thing. And so that's where I got really close with a lot of the people that you see in this film and with Connor and with these guys. I started going to the George Lucas talk show right after that. And then, yeah, I was just, a fan, a friend. And then when Ryan and Marsh came along to want to make the doc, it was, brought to my attention that this would be a good fit and we should all work together. So it just seemed like an easy yes for me at that time. And it's, like for all of us, it's kind of ballooned into what we thought initially the commitment would be, but it's not been anything that we've, resented in any way. It's like, yeah, this should be more. There's more here that we want to tell. So
And this is Ryan's directorial debut, by the way, everybody. Shout out. Okay, let's ping pong to the audience for some questions. Who thinks they have a good one?
Someone break the ice. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. This will not be the last audience question.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I had a question for the director. How did you capture the sincerity of the parents on film, and did you have any challenges with that?
Yeah, so that shoot was really interesting because we sent our cinematographer slash producer, Marsh, on a really hard mission, which was, can you capture the entire Missouri trip yourself? So I gave him like detailed instructions of like, here's every question, here's how I think you might want to approach his parents. But then we just, as he's a filmmaker in his own right, you want to?
Well, I was going to say very quickly, we did that because at the time when we were still filming that, this was just a short and we only had enough funds to make this into a short. So we're like, what is the most efficient way for that to happen? Well, we need the shooter, so Marsh should do it.
Yeah. So it was really an incredible feat that Marsh pulled off. But it was also just a testament to how comfortable Connor's parents are on camera. I mean, they're both performers and there's a little bit of showmanship, as you saw, like them trying to one-up each other. And so once we had that Missouri footage, that's when we realized, okay, for sure now it seems like it's going to be a feature because we get more depth than if it's, say, just about the George Lucas talk show. To me, like, and a lot of people have said this, like, if it's not for the parents, it's not a feature, basically. I don't know how Connor feels about that. If your parents aren't in the movie, it's not a feature.
Connor, follow-up question. Do you find your own parents to be sincere? Off camera, do you
Sincere
find them
and
to be
cinematic.
trustworthy people?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're not insincere, but they are definitely on when the cameras are on, you know?
But I feel like I've never met them when they're off.
That's right.
You know what I
haven't.
mean? Yeah. Oh,
That's
all
right.
right.
So in that way, they're sincere. It's like what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would agree. Yeah, they're not being insincere, but they are very much they're both in on camera mode.
There's also like you have to build trust and make sure like you're not doing a hit piece on my son, right? Like that was established right away. Like, no, this is not, I forget what you kept saying. We're not trying to fog up war you. That was your phrase.
Another question. There we go.
Did anyone in the documentary or for the show reach out to Tom Hanks to see if he could be a guest?
I mean, Connor, you can handle that one.
No, we've never crossed those streams. At the time that they were doing the documentary, when did we first? Was it end of 2019 or end of when was the first meeting?
Yeah.
end of 2018
was the first meeting. Yeah.
At that point, I had yet to record the pilot for Dead Eyes. And then so over the course of that year, I was doing that. And we've never asked Tom Hanks to do. Colin Hanks has done George Lucas Talk Show.
We should also say
Tom-
for those, in case anyone doesn't know, Tom was on Deadeye. Spoiler alert. He does end up showing up on the show. So if you do want to hear a Connor and Tom interaction, it does exist.
Yeah. And we've had a lot of interactions, but there's never been a point where I've explained to him or said to him what the George Lucas Talk Show is. We haven't yet gotten to that point. But it could still happen.
It's it's a stage of intimacy. You can't explain to just anyone what the George Lucas Talk Show is. You need to really be in a comfortable place with a person.
Well, I think when you already have one sort of narrative strand with someone that requires a certain amount of unpacking, then it's sort of then you say, well, also I do this, and would you also come and be on this show? I think if the circumstances, I think I need one more significant interaction with Tom before we get to the point where we're able to get him on into the George Lucas Talk Show world. And who knows if that will happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someday it'll happen someday. Yeah.
Got a question here, dude in the Doughboy shirt.
Hell yeah.
Wow.
Spoon Nation.
last Academy Awards, I didn't see any of the documentaries because they were all so depressing. And I was wondering if you guys were worried about having a certain amount of drama in the documentary, or the fact that Connor pretty much had no drama in his life, besides maybe just normal comedian depression. And is there a darker cut? Were there just a delightful, you plan to put out something delightful?
I remember Ryan saying, let's not make it too depressing so we cannot be nominated for Academy Awards.
Not what this is about.
No.
But I'm actually a very serious person, and this was kind of a real, I don't know, like perfect. I don't know, like it was helpful for me to make this documentary because in my normal life I'm very serious, and so I enjoy comedy, and I enjoyed the process of us not having to be funny while making it. I think that was like, we just took our job seriously as filmmakers. You guys are funny. We let you be funny. Our editor, Rob, is also kind of a comedian in his own right.
Incredibly funny.
He has incredible comedic timing, both as a person and in his editing. But we didn't try to make the medium be funny, too. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else want to take the whole seriousness of it or not part of it.
I don't know if there is this, like, Connor's, I think a serious documentary about Connor would not be worthwhile for anybody, is what I think. Is that right, Connor?
Well,
I'm just saying, I don't think it would express a true version of you.
Connor, for the record, I would love to watch a serious
No,
documentary.
not me.
It would be a
Well,
privilege.
Not worth it.
If there was one made, it would be made without my cooperation
Yeah,
because
that's what.
it's not that there aren't serious things in my life or serious problems. It's just that the problems generally don't have anything to do with this show. And I was always very much like, the more that this documentary focused on the world of the show, the more comfortable I was with it. I would say one of the things that I appreciate, and one of the things that when I saw the film that Ryan made before this, it gave me a positive feeling that he wasn't going to try to make it a funny documentary. Like, he wasn't going to try to make the documentary funny. I won't say what it is. I recently watched a documentary about a comedy person where the documentary itself tries really hard to be really funny, like with the fonts and with a lot of just the way it's edited and scored and everything. And I found it kind of hard to watch. And I was really relieved that this doesn't have like a bunch of goofy, like the tone of it is like, the show is funny and we are funny and it captures that, but it's not like it's trying to have like, it doesn't feel like it's trying to adopt that tone in the way that it tells the story.
I know you said you weren't going to say what it is, but it's Fog of War, right?
Yeah, it's too silly. That camera is too close to McNamara's face.
And just to give you some context, the documentary Connor's talking about is called We Breathe Again, and I produced and co-edited it, and it's about 4 Alaska natives dealing with intergenerational trauma and suicide. So kind of a different picture for this one.
A logical next step is us.
But Connor, you might enjoy this reference. I feel like this is when Coppola went to Lucas and was like, you try American Graffiti. You try your hand with that. Like, this is me trying to do something light. Like,
yeah, I got the sense from you that like it would be a change of pace to the subject matter wise, but that it wasn't like, I didn't get the sense that you were like, now I want to make a really goofy, silly film, that you wanted to make another sincere film, but about a subject that wouldn't maybe feel as deep or dark to work on.
yeah.
Take one more from the audience for front row. Center.
I was kind of wondering, when you're making and editing the movie, how much was it in your minds? Like, what would George Lucas think if he saw this? Like, in the best case scenario, what would you hope he took away from the movie or learned from it? And in the worst case scenario, what were you afraid of that he might think if he saw this?
You want to take this, Connor, or do you want me?
I mean, one of the first movies that George made was a behind the scenes like making of the Rain People for Coppola. And I think that he would probably. I never thought about that in terms of this, except that I kind of thought this might explain the movie to him in a way that I could imagine a world in which he somehow stumbled upon this or someone showed it to him, and it might make him feel like, oh, I could cooperate with that. Like, I'll invite those guys to my museum opening and have them do a show in the cafe of the museum. Like, let's put up a little stage for those guys. Have them do a little show in the museum cafe.
I'd also like to think that George would like this to some extent because we made it for ourselves. Like, we didn't do the fan service of fretting every day about what would the fans of this think. It was like, make it for what resonates for us. And like, that's to me what I love about even the prequels is like, those are George's movies, whether you like it or not. And we did the same with this. Like, it's our version of Connor. It's a Connor Ratliff story. So maybe he would at least appreciate that sort of like, better or worse, this is our story.
Yeah, this is one of those small personal films that he always says he wants to make.
Ideally, we'd love for him to watch it because that would be cool to have George Lucas see your movie. And also because, I think we all feel the same desire that maybe a lot of the fans do and think about, and maybe you guys as well, of like, eventually, not that it has to be the final thing, but it feels like it's leading to eventually having George on the show at some point. So if this is the thing, that would make us so happy as, again, like friends and fans. Like, we want them to achieve that too, because I think that would be really amazing. So that would be the good for sure. The bad, I don't know. He doesn't like it. Oh well, sorry, George.
I have a couple more for you. But you had mentioned, Annamaria, in editing, you found different themes, and how long were you editing the film for? Sorry, I didn't mean to strike a nerve if that does. 3 years, okay.
2020 we started editing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we finished in late 2022.
Yeah. It's not a bad nerve. It's just that it just
Okay.
took on, but also just to mention, we all have everyone on the film team, we all have full-time jobs. This isn't our full-time job. So I think it took as long as it needed because we couldn't dedicate 8-10 hours a day working on this nonstop. And we brought Rob in 2021, and Rob, also has a full-time job editing all day too. So it's, it's a lot of work, and a doc has a lot of footage. So it took as long as it needed. I think we knew like we needed to hit the point where we had to cut off how much time we would spend on it.
I mean, we basically also, we meaning you guys mostly, thought it was pretty much done in 2020. Like, when COVID hit, the story was pretty much over, and we were like, there's not much more we have to film. There's like a few odds and ends that needed to be filmed to wrap it up, but that was it. So then, you're editing for one thing, and then the streaming stuff happens, and the UCB shutting down happens and all that.
Yeah, we kind of waited to tackle the live stream of it all because initially kind of where you see Connor before the June 2020 stuff happens, that was sort of in our mind what was this more of like an uncertain moment. This ends on a more hopeful moment. But initially it was a little bit more of an uncertainty because Connor was in fact like going on a tour for a few months and they weren't doing the show. Griffin took over for a little bit doing his own one-man Watto show.
I did it precisely one time, and I thought it was gonna be the start of an incredible run, and instead it was one of the last shows that ever happened at that theater.
March 9th, March 8th.
It was March 7th.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
still pretty.
Yeah.
It was like Friday before the Tuesday shutdown or something like that.
Yeah.
So initially there was a question mark of, will this show continue if Connor is gone for a while? Maybe when he comes back, he doesn't really want to do it. So we just had to figure out how to tackle the live stream of it all. So that was a whole other piece.
And this sort of actually goes back to your question about conflict in a movie. This was something we were wrestling with a lot during post-production where, it's like, okay, this is not a hero's journey story. And Connor even says it, he just wants to go live in a swamp, basically. The hero's journey part of his life is over. And so I kept thinking, are there examples of good stories well told that don't have conflict at the base of it? And I'd like to think that this is almost more like one of those like Studio Ghibli films where it's more about change happening to the character over time.
Right.
And then even broader than that, sort of the change that the audience goes through. Now you understand Connor a little bit better by the end, but Connor pretty much is the same person he was. He's the Obi-Wan who's just kind of like that at this point.
One more for you guys, and then one more for Connor before we get out of here. I've only seen the movie once so far. One of the big thematic things I picked up on is, what is success? What is failure? Can failure be a success? Can success be failure? That type of thing. What is one thing that the four of you have taken, not from George Lucas, but from Connor Ratliff, that you've now taken to your other projects that you've worked on since wrapping on this, etc.?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Sorry, Connor, to put them on the spot on behalf of you.
I love this question, and it's what makes me excited to talk about this movie is basically the idea of putting something out in the world. And this is something that I think Connor and I agreed upon immediately as artists, and not judging yourself for it. Sure, you're going to worry, like, are you meeting your own expectations, but not, are you meeting other people's expectations of you? And then sort of second is, do you have to have a large audience in order to be worthwhile as an artist? And I think the answer is no. You know, if you do it for 10 people, and somebody quoted very nicely recently, they sort of added another thought, which was, if you do it for 10 people and those 10 people come back, maybe you should judge that as success and failure versus, you know, anything else. So yeah, what about you?
I mean, I know, I feel like we're just gonna like, we blown smoke up Connor right now, but I just love, like, Connor finds all these incredible ideas that are just so unique to him, and like has no fear to just try and make a thing out of it. And even the thing is a one-time show at UCB or something. Like, I've seen so many of those over the years where it's just, here's a fun idea I had and I'm going to put it on. And like, that's so brave and bold. And I feel like I personally feel like I need more meat on the bone before I'm comfortable presenting it out to other people. So I just love that about him. And I feel like, you know, maybe I still need to implement that in my own life, but it's something I think about.
I mean, this is a whole other chapter of stuff that is out of the purview of this documentary, but goes back to your earlier question of like, what are we doing now? When we were in that stage, post-vaccines of like, do we want to do the show in New York every month? Do we want to be traveling with it? This and that. And we were trying a lot of stuff, and we sort of hit a wall and felt a little burnt out. And Connor decided he wanted to take a little bit of a break. And it was like, great, let's just take the time we need until we feel recharged. There's no reason to do anything. And then like 24 hours later, Connor texted me and said, what if I write a play for the two of us? And I was like, oh, like a new play, like write like a new work just to like, it'd be interesting for us to play different characters. And he's like, no, it's George and Watto doing a play. And he wrote a serious one-act, two-hander play that we took to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland last year. And that was, holistically, that was the pitch. I write this, and it's just for the two of us. And we perform it every day for like a month, and it's really intense. And we don't try it out at comedy theaters in New York. We don't frame it that way. We go there just to do the play. Connor's very proud of himself. And
It's a terrible idea.
It was like a thing he introduced as an idea in like August of 22. And it was like a fun hypothetical. And then it just kept on getting closer and closer to happening. And these like financial deposits were happening. And we were struggling to put it together. And we were like 10 days out from getting on a plane to do it. And we were going to have to do our first show within like 16 hours of landing and all this sort of stuff. I was like,
Also, I was the stage manager in it a little bit and had never seen or heard the final play read together.
Seen or heard the final play. I mean, all of it. And I was like truly kind of losing my mind in the weeks leading up to this of just like, this is the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. I'm doing this for my friend, and I understand what we signed up to do, but like we're setting ourselves up for failure. And there was a day where I think Connor could tell I was really freaking out about it. And he very perceptively, as a friend, sort of read me and went, I get the sense that what you're stressed out about is that this show's going to be a disaster, that we're going to fly to a foreign country and perform it, and no one's going to like it, and then we're going to have to perform it again every day for no one. No one's going to show up, and everyone's going to think it's bad. And I went, yes, that's obviously what I'm afraid of. And he went, see, and the difference between you and I is, I don't think that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And I think that statement is like a real glimpse into Connor's mind and how he approaches like creativity and work. And I can't say I have come to agree with it, but I do think about it a lot now. I mean, that's a conversation 10 plus years into us knowing each other when we're already deep in the tank. But I do think about like, is the thing turning out as poorly as it possibly could the worst thing that could happen? And most people would say, yes, inherently, the thing going as bad as it could is the worst it could possibly go. And Connor refuses to see things that way. And I think it's an interesting point of view to have that I at least keep in the back of my head now.
I will admit that a few days after that, the first day we were in Edinburgh is almost as depressed as I've ever been because we were so exhausted. We had our first performance of the show was literally in front of an audience, was literally the first time that we had done it off book. And I just felt like it was I'd made a tremendous mistake, and I had dragged Patrick and Griffin across the ocean to do this thing. So I did have doubts about it.
I mean, I was choosing to leave this part out of the story, but
yeah,
30 minutes before our first performance, you looked at me as shaken as I've ever seen you go, Griffin, I've made a terrible mistake. And I'm so sorry. This was a horrible decision and we're all going to go down in flames. And I was like, now you're saying this? But it worked out. We had a good run.
It was fine. It was good. People liked it.
That's for later. Yeah.
I will say Ryan also asked me a few weeks before we went to Edinburgh. He's like, what if I just came over and I documented the process of the film? I said, Ryan, if you do that, Griffin won't do the play.
Oh, probably true.
And it was too much. Like it would have been way too much. It probably would have made for a very dramatic documentary, but we wouldn't have been able to survive it.
Yeah, it'd be a dramatic documentary in the way that Gimme Shelter is a dramatic documentary. It maybe wouldn't be a very ethical document, though.
I mean, Connor's taught me so much. I think a big thing is that dumb things can be smart and dumb things can be dumb. And either way, it's still worth doing it because people are going to like it, hopefully. And if they don't like it, but you like it, it's still okay. That's a lot of words. I think that made sense, though. And even if you're doing something dumb, if you're enjoying it and you're putting your energy behind it and you're having a good time with it, cool people will also want to join in and do it, which I think is a big thing with the show is that, like, yeah, it's dumb. It's so dumb, but it's fun. And then Seth Meyers shows up and then Whoopi shows up. You know what I mean? Like, they'll still show up because you're having a good time and people enjoy it. And that's great. And if it's dumb and people don't like it, you can talk about how dumb it was. And that's also great. And I think those are two things or a few things to like, just keep with you while you're working on things, because like you might work on something and not think it was worth your time, but then you're like, well, it was fun. Even if it was stupid, it was fun, you know? And I think that sums up the last decade or so of doing things with Connor, which is, has been nothing but joy and roses. Not judging by his face, though.
Well, I have the scramblings of a madman on here, but we do have to get out of here eventually. I'll probably corner you guys in the lobby and talk to you about it. But last question is for Connor. My favorite, there's many parts I love in the movie. I love the texture of you, of what Ryan was able to capture, but you putting on the paint on your beard. I love the cross-cutting scene. The second you get off stage from George Lucas talk show, you're immediately back on stage for the improv. And I believe it's you two are debriefing backstage. I think that part's amazing. But my favorite part is when you're sitting on the bench gosh, there's just a goof that happens. I can't believe you didn't catch this, but a train goes by. And Connor, you were going to tell us what you thought the documentary was about. Could you tell us what the documentary is about in your words?
In terms of I think it's a time capsule. It captures a lot of the moments that originally it was just going to be them filming a show. That was the original offer. And then they were like, what if we make it like a mockumentary with lots of interstitial scenes of you as George Lucas working on the show? And I said to Ryan and Marsh, like, how about if we just give you a look behind the scenes of what goes into this? And my hope is that for people who, you see something on stage and it's funny and it's entertaining, and I think seeing a little glimpse of how something like that comes together. I know I always appreciated stuff like that when I was growing up, and I still do, like where you get a little sense of like, oh, how do these people make this and what's their thought process behind it? And I like that it captures stuff that is, including some of the stuff that sucks about doing a show like this. Like, I always hated the fact that because I was doing back-to-back shows, the show would finish, I would say goodbye to the guests, and I'd say goodbye to Griffin and Patrick, and then I'd do another show. And then when that show ended, those people would leave, and I would then be cleaning up. The whole thing you see in the movie, it was so depressing, and it was always a completely solitary experience, except for the time that Ryan and Marsh filmed it. And when they were filming, I remember thinking, I'm glad that, I don't know, I didn't even know if that would make it into the movie, but I'm like, I'm glad somebody sees this, that this is like the part of, and I also thought it'll be nice if ever someday I'm in a situation where I don't have to do this. And that hasn't happened yet. Like, it's still one of those things where, you clean up your own mess after a show. We did do a show in LA where I smashed a bunch of stuff on stage, and then I went back out to clean it up. And the staff of this theater, Dynasty Typewriter, they had already cleaned it up. And I was like, wow, thanks guys. Like, you cleaned up the mess I made, because they're the staff and that's their job, is to get the theater back in shape. But I think, like, for me, it's the stuff that otherwise I might have forgotten, because you forget a lot of things about stuff, especially even stuff you do a lot, 10 years goes by and you forget, like, oh yeah, that's what the lobby of that theater looks like when you go in it, and it'll be nice to have this at a point where I can look back on that and see, because I don't know, like, there's a new UCB theater opening in New York next week, and it's downtown, and I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever get to do a show like this in an off-Broadway theater, in like an off-Broadway theater that was built for people to perform,
Angels in
Euripides and stuff
America.
like that. Yeah,
did
like
that.
it's a theater where people were doing serious works of theater, and then when we did it, we'd be like, let's throw your Endor sticks at Darth Vader. And some of those, Greek classics might have even been poorly attended, but the night we threw Endor sticks at Darth Vader, it was a complete sellout.
Well, for a show that is described many times throughout the documentary as not for everybody, the documentary can be for everybody. So please do not leave tonight without logging on a Letterboxd, giving it a review, throwing it up on social media. What's next, guys? I know we got into Slam Dance. Do we have anything else coming up?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of screenings. We have this weekend. Tell your friends around town that we have 4 screenings at the Alamo Draft House in downtown LA. Q&As after each one with really cool people. Then we also have a screening at the Calgary Underground Film Festival the following week. I believe that's on next Thursday. And then we have.
So if any of you are going to be in Calgary,
tell your Canadian friends, please. We're doing another screening at the IFC Center in New York, which we're really excited about. That's May 7th. We have an Iowa screening May 17th in Des Moines that we're just booked, and maybe some more screenings to announce soon. Just keep an eye out, and then hopefully just other ways we can get this to all audiences everywhere, not just at specific locations. But, want to take advantage of the theatrical experience because it's so special, and we love that. So
yeah, we're still in the word of mouth phase. So
Yeah.
please spread the word. One more time for our guests. Thank you so much for coming out here. Thank you, Connor. It's very, very late out there. We really appreciate you being here.
bye, Connor.
Bye.
We'll see you soon.
Thanks everybody for coming out. Have a great weekend.